The real reason people lose interest, it's not what you think. You know what's crazy? Most people think others lose interest in them because they're not attractive enough, not successful enough, not funny enough, or not interesting enough. And sure, those things can play a role. But the truth is, people lose interest for reasons that have nothing to do with your worth, your looks, or how much money you make. There are subtle patterns and behaviors that slowly drain the energy out of any connection, whether it's romantic, friendship, or even professional. And most people don't even realize they're doing them. If you're new here, hi, I'm Elena Salvatore. And today I'm breaking down the real reason people lose interest in you. And I'm warning you right now, this might be uncomfortable to hear. But if you're willing to look at this honestly, this could be the thing that changes every single relationship in your life. So let's get into it. Number one, you stop being curious about them. Here's the thing that nobody wants to admit. The number one reason people lose interest isn't because you changed. It's because you stopped evolving. You stopped being curious, not just about them, but about life, about yourself, about the world around you. Think about when you first meet someone, whether it's a romantic connection, a new friend, or even a new colleague you really vibe with. In the beginning, you're asking questions. You're genuinely curious about their stories, their experiences, their perspective on things. You're engaged. You're present. You're listening to understand, not just waiting for your turn to talk. But then something happens. You get comfortable. And comfort, while it feels good, can be the silent killer of connection. You stop asking questions because you think you already know the answers. You stop being curious about their day because it feels routine. You stop exploring new topics together because you've settled into your patterns. And here's what most people don't realize: when you stop being curious about someone, they feel it. They might not be able to articulate it, but they feel the shift. They feel like they've become predictable to you, like they're no longer worth discovering. And that feeling, that subtle sense of being taken for granted, that's what starts to create distance. I'm not talking about the big, obvious stuff here. I'm talking about the small moments. When they tell you about something that happened and you respond with while scrolling on your phone. When they share an idea and you shut it down without really considering it. When you stop asking follow up questions because you're too caught up in your own head. People don't lose interest because the relationship got boring. They lose interest because they started to feel unseen. And curiosity, genuine curiosity, is how you make someone feel seen. It's how you communicate. You still matter to me. Your thoughts still interest me. Your growth still excites me. So, if you've noticed people pulling away from you, whether it's friends, romantic partners, or even people at work, ask yourself this: when was the last time I was genuinely curious about them? When was the last time I asked a question just to understand them better, not to respond or fix or give advice, but just to know them more deeply? The most magnetic people I've ever met are the ones who never stop being curious. They treat every conversation like there's still something to discover. And that energy, that genuine interest in others, is what keeps people drawn to them for years, even decades. Number two, you're too available without being present. This one's going to sound contradictory, but stay with me. People lose interest when you're always available but never truly present. Let me explain what I mean by this. In today's world, we confuse availability with connection. We think that responding quickly to texts, always being free when someone needs us, or constantly being in touch means we're maintaining the relationship. But here's the hard truth: you can be physically available and emotionally absent at the same time. Think about it. How many times have you been sitting with someone, but your mind is somewhere else? You're there, but you're thinking about work, or what you're going to say next, or that thing you need to do later, or you're half watching them talk while also glancing at your phone. You're available in body, but you're not present in energy. And people can feel that. They can feel when you're giving them your time, but not your attention. They can feel when you're there out of obligation rather than genuine desire. And over time, that hollow availability becomes exhausting for them. Here's what happens. They start to feel like they're performing for someone who's not really in the audience, like they're talking to a wall that occasionally nods. And that feeling creates a specific kind of loneliness, the kind where you're with someone but still feel alone. The paradox is this: sometimes being less available but more present is more powerful than being always available but scattered. One meaningful hour where you're fully engaged, fully listening, fully there will create more connection than a week of half hearted interactions. I see this all the time. People wonder why their relationships feel distant, even though they're always there for the other person. But being there isn't enough. You have to actually show up energetically, emotionally, mentally. So here's my challenge for you. The next time you're with someone, whether it's a coffee date, a phone call, or just hanging out, put your phone away, not face down on the table, away, out of sight, and just be there. Listen like their words matter. Make eye contact. Ask follow up questions. Be in the moment with them. Because people don't lose interest because you weren't available enough. They lose interest because when you were available, they couldn't feel you. And that absence of presence is what slowly drains the life out of any connection. Number three, you've stopped growing and it shows okay. This one's going to sting a little bit, but it's important. People lose interest when they sense you've stopped growing, when they feel like you've plateaued, when you've become stagnant. And I'm not talking about career growth or financial success or hitting certain life milestones. I'm talking about personal growth, emotional growth, the kind of growth that happens when you're willing to look at yourself honestly, challenge your own patterns, and evolve as a human being. Here's the thing: when people first connect with you, they're drawn to your energy, your perspective, your way of moving through the world. But if 5 years later, you're still having the same complaints, the same reactions, the same stories, the same limitations, they start to feel trapped in your loop with you. I've watched this happen so many times. Someone will tell the same story about how they were wronged, about the thing that didn't work out, about the opportunity they missed. And at first, people are sympathetic. They listen, they support. But if you're still telling that same story a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, without any evolution, without any new perspective, without any movement forward, people start to disengage. Because here's what that communicates: you're not willing to grow, you're not willing to change, you're comfortable being stuck. And most people, especially people who are actively working on themselves, don't want to be pulled into someone else's stagnation. Growth doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean you can't struggle. It doesn't mean you have to have your life completely figured out. Growth means you're willing to look at your patterns. You're willing to take responsibility. You're willing to try something different. You're willing to be uncomfortable in service of becoming better. And here's the beautiful thing about growth: it's contagious. When people are around someone who's actively evolving, who's reading, learning, trying new things, challenging themselves, having breakthroughs, it inspires them to do the same. That energy is magnetic. It pulls people in. It makes them want to be around you because your growth gives them permission to grow too. But the opposite is also true. When people are around someone who's stuck, who blames everyone else, who refuses to look inward, who's committed to their own victimhood, it's draining. It's heavy. And eventually they start to create distance because being around you feels like being pulled backward. So if you've noticed people losing interest, ask yourself, am I still growing? Am I still evolving? Am I still curious about who I'm becoming? Or have I settled into a version of myself that feels safe but stagnant? The most attractive quality in any human being is the willingness to keep growing, not because you're broken and need fixing, but because you're alive. And growth is what alive things do. So keep growing, keep evolving, keep challenging yourself. That energy alone will keep people interested in you for a lifetime. Number four, you're playing a character instead of being yourself. This is one of the most common reasons people lose interest, and it's also one of the hardest to admit. People lose interest when they realize you're not actually being yourself, when they sense you're performing a version of yourself that you think they want to see. In the beginning of any relationship, whether romantic or platonic, there's this temptation to present your best self, your most agreeable self, your most impressive self. And that makes sense. You want people to like you, you want to make a good impression. But here's the problem: if you're not careful, that performance becomes your default, and eventually it becomes exhausting. Here's what happens: you start agreeing with things you don't actually agree with. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You pretend to like things you don't really like. You hide your opinions because you're afraid of conflict. You dim your personality because you think it's too much. You overextend yourself trying to be what you think they need. And for a while, it works. People like the version of you that you're presenting. But here's the catch: they're not actually liking you, they're liking the character you're playing. And you know this deep down, which is why the relationship never quite feels real, even when it's going well. But here's where it gets really interesting. The moment you start to relax, the moment the real you starts to leak through, people sense the shift. They feel the inconsistency. They realize something was off. And instead of deepening the connection, it creates doubt. They start to wonder, who are you really? Can I trust you? Were you being honest with me before? I see this all the time with people who wonder why relationships start strong but fizzle out. It's because the version of you that started the relationship isn't sustainable. The real you eventually shows up. And when there's too much distance between who you pretended to be and who you actually are, people feel deceived, even if you never technically lied. The irony is, the thing you're afraid will make people lose interest, your authentic self, is actually the thing that creates real, lasting connection. Because when you're genuinely yourself, you attract people who actually like you for who you are, not who you're pretending to be. And here's the beautiful thing about authenticity: it's effortless. You don't have to remember what you said, you don't have to maintain an image, you don't have to perform. You just get to be. And that energy, that relaxed, unapologetic presence, is magnetic. Now, being yourself doesn't mean being unfiltered or rude or inconsiderate. It means being honest about who you are, what you value, what you like and don't like, what your boundaries are. It means showing up as your real self and trusting that the right people will appreciate that. So, if you've been performing, if you've been playing a character, if you've been hiding parts of yourself because you think they're not good enough, I want you to hear this. The people who lose interest when you're being yourself were never your people anyway. And the people who are meant for you will find you infinitely more interesting when you stop trying to be interesting and just be real. Number five, you're not bringing positive energy to the connection. Let me be really direct with you here. People lose interest when being around you feels heavy. When the energy you bring to the relationship is consistently negative, draining, or exhausting. And before you think I'm saying you have to be positive all the time or fake happiness or never share your struggles, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is this: if every time someone connects with you, they leave feeling worse than they did before, they're eventually going to stop connecting with you. Here's what this looks like in practice: every conversation turns into a complaint session. Every text is about something that went wrong. Every time they ask how you are, it's a download of everything that's terrible in your life. Every interaction somehow becomes about your problems, your drama, your stress. And look, we all go through hard times. We all need support. We all need people who will hold space for us when we're struggling. That's what real relationships are for. But there's a difference between occasionally needing support and making someone else responsible for managing your emotional state. When you consistently show up in relationships with heavy, negative victim energy, people start to associate you with feeling drained. They start to brace themselves before interacting with you. They start to feel like they need to prepare emotionally just to have a conversation with you. And eventually, they start to avoid you, not because they don't care, but because their nervous system is protecting them from the consistent heaviness. Here's the hard truth: people want to be around people who add to their life, not subtract from it. They want to be around people who make them feel lighter, more hopeful, more energized, more alive. And If you're consistently bringing the opposite energy, you can't be surprised when people start to create distance. Now, this doesn't mean you can't be real. This doesn't mean you can't share your struggles, but it does mean you need to be conscious of the energy exchange. Are you also bringing joy? Are you also bringing humor? Are you also celebrating their wins? Are you also showing up for them? Or is the relationship entirely centered around your needs and your problems? I had to learn this the hard way. There was a period in my life where I was going through a really difficult time, and I used my relationships as a dumping ground. Every conversation was about my struggles, and I watched people slowly start to pull away. Not because they didn't care about me, but because I had made it impossible for them to enjoy being around me. The shift happened when I realized that even in my hardest season, I could still bring something positive to my relationships. I could still ask about them. I could still show up with gratitude. I could still find moments of lightness. I could still be someone who added value to their life, even while I was struggling in mine. And here's what happened: people came closer. They wanted to support me more because I wasn't making them responsible for fixing me. I was still showing up as a whole person who was going through something hard, not as a victim who needed saving. So if you've noticed people losing interest, pay attention to the energy you're bringing. Are you showing up with curiosity, gratitude, lightness, joy? Or are you showing up with complaints, negativity, heaviness, and drama? Because that energy, more than anything else, determines whether people want to move toward you or away from you. Number six, you're not reciprocating. Here's a simple truth that changes everything. People lose interest when they feel like they're putting in all the effort and you're just receiving it. Relationships, all relationships, require reciprocity. Not perfect 50-50 at all times, but a general sense that both people are contributing, both people are initiating, both people are showing up, both people are investing. But so many people fall into this trap where they let the other person do all the work. They wait for the text instead of sending one. They wait to be invited instead of making plans. They wait for support instead of offering it first. They receive without giving back. And here's what happens: the other person starts to feel like they're chasing you, like they're the only one who cares, like the relationship only exists because they're keeping it alive. And that feeling, that one sided dynamic, is exhausting. I see this all the time with people who say, I don't understand why they stopped reaching out. And when you dig deeper, you realize they never reached out either. They were always responding, never initiating. They were always receiving, never giving. They were always being pursued, never pursuing back. Here's the thing: even the most patient, loving, generous person will eventually get tired of doing all the heavy lifting. They'll eventually start to wonder if you even care, if you even value the relationship. If they stopped reaching out, would you even notice? And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes people are so comfortable receiving that they don't even realize how little they're giving back. They're so used to being pursued that they've stopped showing up. Reciprocity isn't complicated. It's checking in without being prompted. It's remembering the things they told you and following up. It's making plans instead of always waiting for plans to be made. It's showing up for them the way they show up for you. It's giving your time, your energy, your attention, your care, without keeping score, but also without being completely one sided. If you want people to stay interested in you, you have to show them that you're interested in them too. Not just interested in what they can give you, but genuinely invested in who they are and what they need. So ask yourself, in your relationships, are you reciprocating? Are you initiating? Are you giving as much as you're receiving? Or have you become complacent, expecting others to do all the work while you just show up when it's convenient? Because people don't lose interest because they stopped caring. They lose interest because they got tired of caring alone. So here's the reality: people don't lose interest in you because you're not enough. They lose interest because of patterns, behaviors, and energy that slowly erode the connection. And the good news is, all of these things are within your control. You can choose to stay curious. You can choose to be present instead of just available. You can choose to keep growing. You can choose to be authentic instead of performing. You can choose to bring positive energy, and you can choose to reciprocate. None of this means you have to be perfect. It means you have to be conscious. It means you have to care enough about your relationships to show up for them in ways that matter. So start with one thing from this video, just one. Pick the one that hit you the hardest and focus on that because small shifts create massive change, and the way people experience you will start to shift too. If you found this helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss future content. And if you want to go deeper into building better relationships and becoming the kind of person people never want to lose, check out the links in the description. As always, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.